everyone, it's Strawglicks and I'm really excited to make this video. The last video I made was pretty much just the Camp Riverwood rant, which took a really long time and wasn't a usual LPS video, so I'm excited to get back into the swing of things. There's a lot to cover in this video, so we're gonna start off by saying, hey, what's up? Do you recognize this LPS deer from like 4 years ago? I had this girl a really long time ago in 2017, and then I traded her away for a pet, and now I finally got her back. That long later. It's kind of unacceptable how long it took, but it's okay because we finally have her back and I can get back into buying LPS again. And now to talk about the video itself. So of course, as you know, Camp Riverwood is being rewritten and changed a lot, and I figured this time around I'm going to do something a little different. I figure now, since I'm developing the story and characters a lot more rather than just hopping into the series and creating another disaster that needs to be remade in the future, it's probably going to take a really long time to get finished. So to make sure you're not just sitting here doing nothing with absolutely no content for the series for years, I'm going to talk about all the characters today and all their roles in the series, and I'm going to talk about the camp system and everything without any spoilers. And in the future, to make the community and fandom grow while the series is still a work in progress, I can make some little animatics about the characters and stuff, and it'd be really fun. And, as you could probably tell from the title, the series is finally getting a new name. We could finally separate it from the absolute hysterical failure, as my friend likes to call it, that is Camp Riverwood. And that name will be announced later on in the video. So I'm first going to start out by talking about all the campers at Camp Riverwood. Main characters, side characters, everything.
Fingers in his ass, fingers in his ass, Kanye West.
So first off, we have Melody Evans, who's the protagonist of this series. She's an aspiring poet who has her eyes locked hard on her future and going to a college and university. She's hyper-focused on her poems because they have always helped her express her emotions since she's pretty poor at communicating them directly. Poetry has always just been her therapy and her outlet for these emotions and venting them out. As stated previously, she has a hard time communicating with others and expressing her feelings directly, so she would rather hint at how she feels. She has a hard time making friends because of these communication issues, but chooses not to dwell on them and rather to embrace them and say, friends, I don't need those. She's a very independent person who wants to be independent from her parents, from other people, and do everything herself and refuses help from others. She's very confident in her abilities and how she writes. And considering her age, 17, and the fact that she's graduating soon, she is very hyper-focused on these poems and her future, again, attending a college and all that. If she does happen to meet someone that she takes a liking to, she will do bad things to get their attention since she doesn't know how to communicate. It's not out of malice, but rather just because she genuinely has no clue how to socialize. She refuses to believe that socialization is really important because, hey, it's not like she has pent-up rage or anything. She can easily just express her emotions through these poems. She's totally fine. She quickly learns the hard way through the series that, she's not. She has a very hard time paying attention to different conversations and things that she's not very interested in. Her mind will wander very easily and just escape to whole different worlds. When she finds something that she can really focus on and make a whole world out of, she will absolutely just stay up nights in a row just to work on it, like with poetry. But she thinks this is a really good thing and doesn't see the issues in it. She's very oblivious to her surroundings and, of course, her problems and socialization issues. She is very ready to grow up and be on her own despite her flaws. And that is our angel, Melody Evans. I adore her with every fiber of my being. Next up, we have Monica Gunderson, the antagonist of this tale. Monica is a very controlling, conniving, and clever person. She knows exactly how to find the good in people and use it to her advantage, and she knows how to track down people's insecurities. She has her way with words so long as she has control, but the moment somebody defies her authority, she starts to crumble. Underneath all this toxicity, Monica genuinely wants to make friends and get along with people, but unfortunately she has a massive weight on her shoulders that interferes with her friendships. Monica, you could call the justice warrior of camp. She is looking to give people consequences for their wrongdoings and believes that the world is after her. She gets defensive if you disagree with her authority and her actions because she thinks that you are just as bad as the people she is against. Due to her trust issues and experiences of the past, if anyone makes any mistakes around her, she will make them feel bad for it for a very long time. She drags out issues for much longer than necessary because of these trust issues. Basically, putting it short, she's a supporter of cancel culture. Due to all this power and manipulation making it easier to make friends, she thinks she has to keep it up. On a more positive side of things, she's a very funny and social person. She was always willing to make new friends with new people, but if she doesn't like someone, she will very passive-aggressively let them know. She obsessively hyper-focuses on this responsibility to clear the world of bad people, and as a result, she becomes a very toxic person over the years. Until she learns to change and listen to the voice of reason, she will continue to make friends just like this. Next up is Roxy Anderson, who is currently a side character. First of all, her LPS has changed since the last Camp Riverwoods. Her old LPS doesn't really suit her personality very well, and this one just looks a lot more innocent in my opinion. Speaking of, Roxy herself is a pretty naive and insecure girl. More than anything, she wants other people to like her and approve of her. She expects everyone in the world to enjoy her company, and when they don't, she assumes it's her that's the problem. Of course, she always has to be the one at fault for anything that goes wrong. A lot of the time, she just wants to impress Monica and the other popular girls around her, who seem a lot better and a lot happier. She'll likely get more development over time because she might become a main character. Next up is Maddie Jenkins, another side character in the series who has also, since the last Camp Riverwood, changed LPS. This one is already going to be taking the main role of a character in another series, so I replaced Maddie with someone who I honestly think fits her a lot better. Due to Maddie's lack of a role in this series, she really doesn't have too much going for her. All I can say is you could definitely count on her to be the nice camper. She's always open to talking to new people and getting to know them and welcoming them into her group. She's always trying to get people involved and let them have fun. Always encouraging hobbies, sometimes encouraging people too much to the point they make bad choices, and she doesn't see anything wrong with it. So Maddie's a pretty sweet girl and there's not much more. Next we have Brooke Hills, who is another side character, and she's actually going to be this LPS in the future. I don't know what it is with my attachment to Brooke specifically, but God, she is one of those sarcastic people who are always trying to tell her friends, like, stop being idiots. She's always the one who has to knock some sense into people. She feels a bit more like a parent than a friend. And that sort of drives from her strict household that she grew up in, where everything had to be perfect, rules had to be followed, chores had to be done, and she expects her friends to live by the same standards. And when they don't, she doesn't understand it, and she's simply disappointed. She's the type to slap you and tell you to pull yourself together and give you a motivational pep talk if you're crying, but of course not in a malicious way, more of a strict friend way. She's a very genuine and honest friend, and I like her development, especially considering she's only a side character. And now we have Amanda Bodners, whose LPS didn't actually change. She's always trying to be a very nice and sweet girl, but she's not as welcoming as Maddie is. If she knows her friends are uncomfortable with someone, then they will try to push her away. She loves childish things like toys and playgrounds, sandboxes, anything that society might consider childish. She never forgot what it was like to be a little kid. And she actually connects with young children really well, so she wants to be an elementary teacher or a photographer of some sort. She's got most of her life figured out, except that they're having a bit of a gender crisis, which is why they use she and they pronouns, because I want to get some representation. I thought that it might be a good opportunity since she doesn't necessarily have many struggles. It's canon that she thought she had her whole life figured out, and then all of a sudden, gender crisis, because it just seems like they can't get a break. Now the next two are a bit more special because they are new characters who were not in the previous Camp Riverwoods. The purpose for this was basically just because why does it make sense that Melody's the one new kid who got invited to Camp Riverwood this year? Our first girl is Nissan Kratiri. She's actually not going to be used with this LPS. She's going to be used by this gal right here, who I don't yet have. She also has some pretty decent development considering she's a side character and all. Like Melody, she's very hyper-focused on her future considering she's now 17 and going to be graduating soon. But unlike Melody, she doesn't have her career figured out yet. She's come to Camp Riverwood due to an identity crisis and is trying to figure out what career path she should take, what really strikes her fancy, what really clicks with her, something she will be content with for the rest of her life. But the thing is, she did find a potential career path, and that was art, but her parents discouraged the idea. She's tried to suppress her interest for art for so long because she thinks it'll interrupt her career. Like her parents, she's worried that she'll grow up to be poor on the streets drawing for people. After all, that's what they told her. Nissan prefers not to talk to anyone, but unlike Melody, it's not like if someone starts a conversation with her, she'll just go along with it. She, refuses to talk to anyone. So you could say she's very independent from strangers, but relies a lot on her parents' word. And that is Nissan Kratiri, one of the new characters in Camp Riverwood. The next new character I also don't have yet. Her name is Rodney Sparks. This German Shepherd is just a temporary replacement, as her actual LPS is going to be this Scottish Terrier. Now, Rodney here is probably going to be a main character in the series. She is also one of my absolute favorites, which is why it may have come down to this decision. Rodney is such a genuine, happy-go-lucky, adorable ball of sunshine. She's the friend that wants to bring everyone closer and is always willing to help. Like, she's such a helpful person. She's always the therapist friend. She's always the shoulder you can cry on and the person you can rely on. And she doesn't mind it one bit. She doesn't let it stress her out. She just takes it all. As long as she's being helpful to someone, making her friends happy. She really deeply cares about other people and just wants to come to Camp Riverwood and make a bunch of friends and show off her skills. Speaking of skills, she is a very talented chef and she has a lot of experience from her past. She wants to teach all her friends how to cook and bake, and she wants to just do the world a favor and make great dishes that'll be remembered forever. She will go on and on, rambling about all of her interests at once, leaving no room for anyone else to talk. She can tell when people don't want her around or think that she's extra, but she'll try to force herself into their group anyway. I'm very happy that I made her a main character because, God, I adore her. And that is all of the campers of the Leaves Cabin, or the Leaves Group. This group is led by Miss Schlatt, and she basically watches over the campers and makes sure they don't get into too much trouble. She doesn't do a very good job. Now it's time to move on to the second group of campers. Here we meet the infamous Gwen May, who is going to be played by this LPS if you couldn't tell. This is just a custom in progress. And my, has she improved since the old days. But she doesn't realize that. Gwen is a much nicer, much more sweet person, although she doesn't come off as that at first. And of course, her past says otherwise, as she was basically a middle school dictator. She loved getting the attention from the other students at school. She loved the popularity. It was her therapy. The attention from those students was the attention that she never got from her mom growing up. That's why popularity is so personal to her. She's always worried about maintaining her reputation, to the point she worries more about it than her friends and loved ones. She always thought she had to be a jerk to be popular in middle school. I mean, that was the social norm, right? Plus, if she wasn't rude, then people wouldn't want to pay attention to her. They'd maybe make fun of her. They'd bully her to the ground like her mom did. And so, like her mom, she decided to order people around so that they would obey her every command. And now in high school, she's tried to change since then. She's tried to be way nicer to people, but she's lost her reputation over time. She's constantly debating whether to stay true to herself or go back to being a ruthless dictator to get that attention back. She associates changing and becoming a better person with the loss of her reputation. She's constantly debating whether to just be a better person or go back to her old ways. She wants to move on from those middle school days, but it's hard because she can't forgive herself. She became the abuser that is her mother. It's also pretty difficult with people like Monica constantly reminding her of her past mistakes and trying to cancel her for it. Gwen also really genuinely cares about her friends now. She really wants the best for them, they want the best for her, and yet she constantly has to apologize to them for lashing out at them because of her pent-up anger that she takes out on the wrong people. I love her a million times better now, and I think she's a lot more realistic and sympathetic. Next up is Rudy Sampson, who is Gwen's best friend. She is slightly underdeveloped, but I do have some personality for her. Rudy is very kind and considerate and good-hearted. She knows how to use her words properly, and she knows what's crossing the line. She knows what upsets Gwen, and she highly respects her boundaries. After all her years of friendship, she's very protective of Gwen. Oftentimes when Monica and Gwen are fighting and she pushes her over the edge, Rudy's always there to comfort Gwen and defend her to the end of the earth. But even still, she knows when Gwen makes a mistake and tries to correct it. She bottles up a lot of her emotions and anger because she puts others before herself. Every once in a while, she'll have this massive breakdown that's letting out all those pent-up emotions. And when she's in that sort of state, she just can't find a way to calm down. She's constantly trying not to make mistakes. She wants to be perfect for Gwen. She wants to be the perfect friend for her. It's not that Gwen pressures her to be a good friend or makes her insecure. It's just how Rudy is. It is a problem for her to work out on her own. And that is some of Rudy for you. Next is Mabel Spencer. Mabel also cares a lot about her best friend Gwen, but she's not as considerate as Rudy is. She doesn't care as much about popularity. As much as she wants happiness for Gwen, she sees that it's unhealthy. She sees her constant mood swings and debating what kind of person she should be and how she should behave, and she doesn't really encourage it at all. Unfortunately though, she doesn't have a very good way with her words, unlike Rudy, so she comes off as insensitive. Even though she knows that this is unhealthy, she doesn't exactly know how to express that. She makes excuses despite what her gut is telling her, like maybe I'm in the wrong, who knows, maybe I just don't know any better. She's also a pretty eccentric girl. She doesn't really have a career in mind, but she doesn't really care either. She pretty much ignores her future and her plans, and prefers to just live out her youth the best she can. She's very into fashion and dancing, although she sees dancing as more of a hobby than a potential career path. She doesn't really have a main passion in mind, and she does not care. I love Mabel a lot, and I can't wait to give her more development. And then we return to side characters. This is Elizabeth Griffins. She's a very academically smart girl. She cares a lot about her parents and wants to impress them with her skills. She too has a lot of pent-up rage but doesn't exactly realize it and doesn't see the problem. In fact, that's how she sees most of her issues. She doesn't, and when she realizes that the issue is present, she just kind of ignores it, brushes it off as nothing. She used to be really insecure and cared a lot about impressing other people with her wit and her charm and her skills. But now she just doesn't really care and hangs out with her friends. If somebody's talking smack to her, she'll just be like, okay, I'm gonna leave because this is just awkward. You might consider her one of the quiet kids at camp. She also considers herself not like other girls. Next up is Rebecca Sprouts. She's not going to be played by my mascot, unfortunately. She's going to be played by this pet right here that I don't yet have. Rebecca tries to be as sweet as she can, but she comes off as passive-aggressive and insensitive. She can say some of the meanest, most snakish shit to someone's face and will just walk away not realizing it. She's been besties with Elizabeth since diapers. She's pretty attached to her friends and the past, and nostalgia is a huge thing that'll just make her break down into tears. She tends to run away from problems rather than face them. And that's all I really have on her since she is another side character. Next we have Hannah Smith, who became a main character later in the remake, but I don't really know if we're gonna go with that plot point anymore. Hannah's a pretty petty girl. If you hurt her at some point in her life, she will not let you live it down. She doesn't like to meet new people and is mostly attached to her current friends, and she avoids new experiences overall. She refuses to change and adapt, which is why graduation is very stressful to her. And that is all I really have on her. She is not BFF material, I'll tell you that. Next up we have Claire Bachlida, who actually has a pretty interesting backstory on her name. In the original, her name was Claire Bachlida, but then in the remake I just randomly changed her name to Raina. I did always see this LPS as Raina in the past, so maybe it was an accident? Also, in the original, her birthday was in episode 14, but then in the remake, I just replaced her birthday with someone else. So to do justice for Claire, I'm changing her name back, and she's gonna reclaim her birthday. Now, onto personality-wise, she is a very interesting person. She's a huge kiss-ass and wants Gwen to notice her. She's one of the few remaining campers who actually respect Gwen's authority and a reputation. She's pretty stubborn and confident that she does nothing wrong. She likes to act like Gwen's little servant. She's also a flat earther and likes to theorize and think about conspiracies a lot. She's very passionate in debating, but unfortunately she's not very respectful of other people's opinions. All she wants out of an argument, it isn't the fun, it isn't the thrill. She's just determined to get the other side to agree with her. So Claire's an interesting one. Next up we have another new camper, and she is Leah Quante. She's going to be played by this monkey right here. Like Amanda, Leah is very childish and is into what you might consider childish things, but she doesn't exactly embrace it and she's rather embarrassed. She could be really rude to people if she needs to, and she's not afraid to speak her opinion. She always immediately says what's on her mind without thinking about the consequences. But she doesn't mean to be a bully of any sort. Everything she says has good intentions. She's a pretty mellow person and tries to stay out of drama, but if she gets dragged in, she will find a way to get dragged out, even if it means tearing down other people's self-esteem. Leah is a bit underdeveloped, but she is only a side character for the time being. And now we have yet another newbie. Her name is Taylor Darning, and she's actually going to be one of the main characters. This is the only new camper that I actually own. Like, this is going to be the LPS that plays her. And is she underdeveloped? Like, I need to work on her quite a bit. All I know is that she's very protective of her friends, but unfortunately she's not very protective of herself. She doesn't have a lot of self-esteem. She's very brave except for one minor fear that she has, and it's the dark, which she's embarrassed by. She's very careful with her words and often stops mid-sentence to just rephrase what she's about to say. She's also very good at keeping promises. It's understandable why these are the only traits she has written down, because she wasn't going to be a main character at first. And that is all of the campers of the Flowers Cabin, or the Flowers Group at Camp Riverwood. This is their lead instructor or advisor, Ms. Scrunchy. And now for the final group. Now we meet Cody Trainer. He's changing like a lot. He is one of the characters that is changing the most since the previous versions, so there's a lot to be done with him. But as of now, he's a character that needs to find himself again, who's kind of lost his identity a bit. He feels disconnected from a lot of the people at camp. But when he does feel like himself, he's a very jolly, happy guy like he was in the previous versions. He likes to crack jokes, he likes to make people smile and laugh. He is a firm believer in laughter is the best medicine, because medicine's gross. He's kind of a concerned guy who doesn't exactly step in to help or take any action, but he's just like, is everyone here okay? Like, I'm kind of concerned. He tries to stay out of drama, but sometimes he just gets dragged in anyways, so he finds a way to play his role. I honestly don't know what else to say on him. He's a work in progress. Next we have Dakota Hughes, who also is a work in progress because he was very underdeveloped in the previous versions. Dakota, all I know about him really is that he's kind of a loser, but not in a bad way, just kind of in a funny way. Like, it's canon that he can only cook ramen and raviolis just because. Like, who can only cook ramen and raviolis? Who does that? Does anyone do that? Well, Dakota does, because he's a loser. Just little details like that. As for personality, he is very underdeveloped. He has a hard time speaking his opinions and saying what's on his mind. He always goes to his friends, specifically his best friend who we'll get into next, for advice and a pep talk. Otherwise, he can't gather the courage to say things himself. He needs other people's help and support for a lot of different things, and he's not afraid to ask. So he's definitely not the most confident and social butterfly on the street. He relies on other people a lot, and he doesn't exactly have many plans for his future. He often just takes inspiration from what other people do because he doesn't really know who he is. Also, like Cody, he doesn't like to get involved in drama, but he's just kind of, what the actual heck is happening? Are you guys okay? Now we have Shane Allspice, who is Dakota's best friend. Not a lot on Shane either. These poor boys need some development. I do know that the plot point that sort of made him a main character definitely isn't present anymore, which makes things difficult. He's a little mean and got a bit of an attitude. He'll make mean jokes sometimes just for the heck of it. A lot of the time he's just trying to make friends and make the people around him laugh. He can't take a lot of things seriously, and instead he'll just make inappropriate jokes out of them. He's not the best person for advice, and yet he's the one Dakota trusts the most. He is trying to take his problems and his friends' problems more seriously as time goes on. He also repeats his behaviors very often because he has a hard time learning. He doesn't ever commit and isn't very good at making promises. Next we have Todd Wilson, another one of the side characters, and as you have noticed, his LPS has changed. Since Todd is just a side character, let's just be real, all these boys are freaking underdeveloped. But I'm still really attached to him and see a lot of potential in him. He's a dorky guy who doesn't have a lot of courage. He doesn't know how to be confident, and like Dakota, he often goes to his friends for help. He's always trying to be funny and get a laugh out of people, but it doesn't work out well. He comes off as someone awkward who doesn't fit in. He's also kind of a goody two-shoes and knows to follow the rules, so he's a good boy. Next, we have Glenn, who might be a main character, but I'm not sure. He sort of started becoming a main character in the remake of Camp Riverwood, but I don't know if that'll stick. He was this LPS in the original Camp Riverwood, and then in the remake I just changed him for seemingly no reason, although I might not have had this LPS at the time. Whatever, point is, this is his character. He hates absolutely everybody, including you. Doesn't matter if you did anything wrong, he will just turn down any help or any conversation from anyone else. I'm still working on a reason why, but he's definitely the independent type. He despises drama, it has hurt him in the past, and he clearly has some pretty bad trust issues. He cares a lot about hard work and mostly just cares about getting things done. He's a firm believer in logic over emotions. If you're feeling upset, he is not going to care at all. He's just going to tell you to get over it and get your work done. Yeah, Glenn's pretty much a businessman in the making. Next we have Brody Hutt, who is one of my personal favorite boys. I don't really know why. He's a funny little dude who's trying to gain some courage and confidence in his last year of high school. He and his friend Todd have always just been the invisible losers in the crowd who are easy to pick on, and he's ready to be done with that life. He wants to drag others into his ideas and his plans and share them with them. He wants everything to go accordingly to plan, and when it doesn't, things just start to cave in and fall apart. He's a pretty cool guy, and he's actually really smart too, academically at least. He has no clue what other people around him like. He doesn't know what it takes to be cool, but he's trying at least. He's a dorky, crazy kind of dude who likes to rock and roll. And that's Brody. I just really like his energy for some reason. Now we have yet another new character who, again, is not going to be this LPS. He is going to be this one instead, which I bought, but then we moved houses and we kind of just never got it. This is Cole Hansen, and he's also underdeveloped. Wow, what a surprise. But like Brody and the other boys, I just love his energy. He's a relaxed guy who's constantly telling other people around him to chill out and stop taking everything so seriously. Just chill and live life. He's very laid back and cares about the people around him. If someone is feeling very lonely or isn't fitting in, he is there to support them. He's also a very loud guy who won't hesitate to speak what's on his mind. Doesn't exactly have good manners. And that's about it for Cole. He's a work in progress, or I might leave him the way he is since he is a side character. And now for another new camper. This is Michael Timbers, and he's going to be played by this guy right here. Michael is a very quiet dude, not because he wants to be, but because other people don't really like to talk to him. He's sort of a typical nerd at first sight, but when you get to know him, he's very passionate about the things he does. He loves all things theater, he loves to sing and dance and perform, and he constantly wants people to be impressed with what he does. He feels underrated and underestimated by the people around him. Michael can be pretty nasty and vicious if you push him to his limit, which his limit is pretty much just calling him dumb. Yeah, he sort of has some anger issues to work out. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Rocks Cabin or the Rocks Group, the final group at camp. This is their lead instructor or advisor, Mr. Clormington. Well, that sure was a journey and a half. I really hope you like the characters and can get to know them more based on this video. Again, I am going to make some little animatics here and there, just showing off how they are. Make some jokes and memes here and there, let the fandom grow. Let me know who your favorites are. And that concludes part 1 of talking about Camp Riverwood. I know I said I would go over a lot more in this video, but I'll probably make these kinds of videos throughout the years anyways. So trying to stick almost all the content into like an hour-long video is just tedious. Plus, this video is already long enough, and I think it's kind of organized to have all the characters in one. But before you leave, I do owe you something. The new name of the series. Keep in mind, this name might not be final, but it is at least a temporary change to Camp Riverwood, so you don't have to call it that anymore. This name has a lot of deeper meaning that will be explained once you finish watching the series in the years to come. This series name is called LPS Just Petty. That is the current temporary name, might be final, but we'll see. At least now we can finally move on and separate ourselves from that absolute dumpster fire. So, what do you think of the new name? Any theories? Well, thank you guys so much for watching part 1 of this little series, I suppose. Let me know what else I should talk about that's spoiler-free. Also, I might go more in-depth in the remake of Camp Riverwood soon enough, so look forward to a video on that. In my rant about Camp Riverwood, I mainly focused on the original. So let me know your thoughts on that as well. This was genuinely a really fun video to make, and I like how it turned out. So thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed. I really hope you guys like the characters. And I'm hoping to make some skits and films and actual videos soon, so look forward to that too. Hope you have a wonderful day, afternoon, and night.